Good afternoon, everybody. The next talk is the YOTA 2022 Croatia from Dan McGraw, Mike Zero Whiskey Uniform Tango, and Hamzah Shah 2 Echo Zero Hotel X-Ray Sierra. And the rest, I think the rest of the YOTA team are in the front row here to provide moral support. Dan and Hamzah will be presenting the YOTA 22. On the YOTA 2022 summer camp in Croatia, what happened during the event and what learnings the UK team have brought back to engage with other youngsters in ham radio. Dan McGraw was first licensed at the age of 11 and since then has enjoyed nearly every aspect of it. His main interests are construction and HF contesting. He's an active member of the Cam Hands and regularly travels on D-expeditions, most recently activating ZC4 in January 2020. His previous presentations at the convention have been construction focused, a crash course in soldering and designing circuits for home construction. I will now hand over to Dan and Hamzah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for coming. Get this on. Cool. So yeah, we're going to be presenting on our experience at the YOTA 2022 camp and some of the learnings that we've got from it to try and bring back. But first, let's have a quick look at what is YOTA. So YOTA stands for Youngsters on the Air, and it is primarily IARU region, started in IARU Region 1, but has slowly spread out to be worldwide. And what its main focus is, it's a quickly growing group of young radio amateurs from Region 1, whose goal is to get more young people interested in amateur radio and grow the community. So this is their own mission statement from their website. Who counts as a youngster in the terms of amateur radio. So this is defined as anyone who is 25 years old or younger, and they organise a wide range of activities throughout the year. So these include YOTA contests, December, which is defined as YOTA Month, and the YOTA Summer Camp, which is what we're mainly going to talk about today. So the YOTA contest, there are 3 of these each year, which take place in May, July and December. They're relatively short contests and essentially all bands SSB and CW, and the exchange is your signal report plus the age on the 1st of January that year. And the points you score for each contact are related to the age, so the younger the operator, the more points you get. The theory with this is that younger operators, perhaps with less competitive stations, can still sort of get the same interest and pile-ups without having either a huge amount of metalwork in the sky or needing to travel halfway around the world to qualify as an interesting DXCC. There is also YOTA Month, so the goal of this is less competitive, but the aim is to use it as an opportunity to get youngsters on the air. So we have used this in the past to sort of encourage schools and local scout groups and various other members to come along and try radio in a perhaps more relaxed scenario. There are, of course, people who want to... There are awards for working as many YOTA stations as possible, so there are people who just sort of want the 5-9 job done in the log so they can get the sort of trophy for doing so. But it is also an opportunity to sort of invite them over to some of the bigger stations, put them on the air, show sort of how big a pile-up you can get. You know, that realization that you can just work, 4 hours straight of sort of US and Caribbean stations at the right time of day. For some of them is still quite a thrill, which is an impressive thing to achieve in an age of mobile phones and Skype, where communication can be valued almost as a given. And this encompasses basically every single mode of operation, HF, VHF there, but contacts on any band are valid, satellites, voice, Morse, data, anything goes. It's just about trying to get people who are either new to amateur radio or sort of taking their first steps in amateur radio, trying to get them on the air, just get them making the contacts, because ultimately it's about filling the bands with activity and trying to encourage new operators.
The YOTA Summer Camp is another thing that is part of the Youngsters on the Air scheme. Every year since 2011, there's been a YOTA Summer Camp, apart from COVID. The first one was in Romania in 2011. The next was in Belgium and Netherlands. Then we had Estonia, Italy, Austria, Great Britain in 2017, South Africa in 2018, Bulgaria 2019, and then the next one was Croatia 2022. This year, there were 100 youngsters from over 24 countries. This is a picture of all of us on the final day. from all the countries, and there we are in the back side of the picture. Meet the UK team. So 4 of us went. Dan McGraw was the team leader. It was my first event. Peter and Paul's also first YOTA event. So Dan, do you want to just say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I mean, there's not much to say. I got introduced fairly well, but yeah, I've unfortunately just grown out of YOTA, 26 years old now, but realised whilst on this camp that I'd been licensed for 15 years, which got a little bit scary very quickly. But yeah, main interests are construction and HF contesting, particularly CW.
I've been licensed just since COVID. Hopefully I'm going to be doing my full license very soon. My main interest is sort of portable operation, portable HF and VHF, contesting for fun. And I really enjoy the YOTA camp because it was a fantastic way to meet so many people who are basically the same age, but from a broad range of backgrounds and different experiences. We really learnt so much from each other, and it's sort of, I left really, really energized and wanting to do more activities and organise things in the UK for young people and get them involved in the hobby. So we had quite a few stations in Croatia. We had 2 HF stations, 1 remote HF station, 1 Oscar 100 station, and a 6 and 2 meter station. We made 7,000 contacts in the week. This is the CW station. We have Dan and Paul operating, and that was a very fun experience. Even I, who don't know Morse code, got to sort of operate with the keyboard interface. So I made a few contacts on Morse too. That was quite cool. We used flex radios for sideband. That was another very interesting experience because often youngsters, one of the problems is budget. So a lot of people have lower end transceivers. So it was very nice to be able to use some of the more expensive radios, basically, as well as operating. It was just fun to use the radios, and that sort of engaged a lot of people as well. And they were thinking, you know, look at what we can do with these radios, and this is how sort of modern radio can be. Just a nice picture of the antennas at sunset. I just thought it was a beautiful picture to include.
So, one of the highlight events is the Intercultural Evening. So this is an opportunity for all the teams to bring sort of food, drink, and sort of any snapshots of their culture they can to the evening. So you'll quite often get people dressing up in traditional dress. Some people brought board games from their country. And every team sort of goes around, shows off what they have brought, describes it to the other, and then you get a sort of evening trying it all. Trying to think up things that were stereotypically British and sort of would be interesting was a bit of a challenge, but based on our survey, I can confirm that Iron Brew does not go down well, but slightly nervous of Gav in the front row for that one. Twiglet's not popular.
Even less so than the Iron Brew.
But proud to confirm that dairy milk is very well received throughout, so fairly solid representation there. What else we got? We've got sort of Lithuanian team and the Spanish team there showing, you know, some of the countries have bought sort of cured meats, cheeses. We were sort of a bit more limited by taking it on a plane. But no, it's a great evening and a great chance to sort of socialise in a slightly more casual environment. You know, and find out about people's lives outside of radio, because their radio experiences are all interesting, but there is more to people, and actually finding out some of that was a really interesting part of it as well. Now, some of the other things that they had organised, which were sort of tangential but are still incredibly interesting. One of the big things was they had the Astronomy Society in Zagreb had come along and brought several telescopes with them. So this photo of the moon was actually taken by someone sort of pointing a smartphone down a telescope. You could see it in this detail. And later in the evening, Saturn came up, and they recounted seeing sort of 3 or 4 of its moons as well. So, you know, very impressive setup, you know, just taken in the middle of a park in Zagreb. Also a fire pit, you know, a chance to sort of play games and just sort of talk. This was on the last night, so this was sort of socialising before the relatively long journey home for most people. So going back to radio, one of the big things that they wanted to do is do the side of radio that you can't just do in a shack, that takes that more organisation and planning to sort of relieve the burden so you could try out all these different things. One of them was COTA, which was Castles on the Air. So this is a Dubovac Castle, which is at the top of a very, very long flight of stairs. But lovely place, great to operate there. So we spent about half a day operating from there. It's also, you can do a tour around it. It's one of the sort of many hill forts that were built around Karlovac to sort of defend the local area. It's quite a strange geography, actually. It's mostly fairly flat with these sort of fairly sudden hills, and every one of those has a sort of similar castle to this on it, these hill forts. So a great opportunity, and where we were operating from is sort of about where this picture was taken. So that was put on air using the call sign 9 Alpha 3, I believe, YOTA for that one. Sorry, 9 Alpha 5 YOTA. So that was to give a bit of opportunity they were doing an award for people working the stations. So for some of the different big events, they had their own call sign to sort of count off as an extra thing to help encourage activity. So this is one of the shots from the site. So most of us were on top of this sort of grassy hill. The castle is just in the background behind those. And the Croatians know how to seriously do portable operation. You can see the cobweb there. That antenna was bought by the French team for operating on 4 meters, which was quite exciting for them because they don't have that in their country, I believe. So they were all very excited to try that. And there is also a 2 meter beam there. Not very high up, but this hill just dropped off, so it actually performed really, really well.
The next exciting activity we did was IOTA, Islands on the Air. We went to Kirk Island. This was a very, very long coach journey, but it was completely worth it. It was stunning, and the weather was fantastic, and we also got to spend some time on the beach just further along, and the water was amazingly blue, almost like in that picture, actually. As part of the IOTA, it was quite a relaxed day. We had an Oscar 100 station and a HF station set up. It was really nice as part of the sort of YOTA camp. Everywhere we went, we did a lot of team building exercises and activities, which we were encouraged to think of ourselves. So that the YOTA experience really sort of tries to empower young people to take ownership of the whole process, not just about radio operating or sticking someone in front of a microphone, but it's sort of more about the hobby and the community aspect of it as well, which was really fantastic. So a lot of team building and relaxing as well as operating. Some of the equipment we had, Peter's just laughed. So that picture there, we were trying to fix a Windows XP laptop, which was not playing ball at all. So luckily, we spent about 45 minutes trying to get this laptop to work, but we did it just in time to actually get the satellite pass, which I believe was CAS 4A. So that was a really rewarding experience in itself. That's the antenna we were using, which was fully motorized. Made life very nice. Instead of at home, sort of trying to track an antenna with a tape measure Yagi sort of pointing all over the sky, that made life quite a lot easier. Just a picture on the left. You can see, I think another satellite, maybe that was the ISS that was passing. Everyone was really excited with satellite operation because not many people have tried it before, and you need to be at the right place at the right time. So we got quite lucky with quite a lot of satellite passes, and it was very exciting. On the right-hand side, that's me operating Oscar 100. Something funny was said, I can't remember what, but it was just really fun. I think that sort of captures the whole spirit of the YOTA week, really. And finally, there was SOTA, Summits on the Air. So we went up to one of the higher mountains in the area. The reference is 9 Alpha Zulu Hotel 002. It was quite high up, and obviously the thing with SOTA, that one of the rules is that everything sort of has to be powered with a battery. You can't use any external power. and it was quite a steep hill as well, so we didn't have any vehicles. This picture on the left, basically everyone was carrying something, so I had to carry a concrete block up a mountain. Normally, SOTA's right up my alley because I put everything in a backpack, so I was like, yeah, this is going to be fantastic. But people were carrying steel beams, concrete blocks, tables. We had a full station, so as you've seen in the other pictures, the stations were set up with tables and chairs and big antennas. So we did exactly the same thing here as well. So everyone carrying things up was quite a cool experience. We've never done SOTA like that before. So as you can see in the background, the tables and the big batteries and the full-size antennas that we used, although it was difficult carrying everything up, it was definitely worth it, and we made lots of contacts on different modes, and people got to experience actually setting up antennas, and it was just a very good team-building exercise as well.
So to cover some of the technical aspects, there was also activities focused around sort of construction and building your own things. So this was a project designed by one of the organisers. He called it his WABIT transmitter. What it was a CW beacon, effectively, using one of the Silicon Labs 5351 parts that sort of everyone's a fan of for doing whisper beacons and sort of generating a frequency anywhere. So we had an activity one day outside where we all soldered up the kit. So everyone there, you know, a variety of sort of skill levels, but in the end we managed to get pretty much all of them working. Later on there was an activity where everyone sort of coded up the Morse beacon to send their own call sign, which was, you know, very impressive. What was provided was a library of here's how to set the output frequency and turn it on and off. But there were people there going from absolutely no technical experience at all to actually programming up something that could send their call sign, and it sort of continued this community aspect of it, in that the people who did it relatively quickly, being either technical people or knowing how to use an Arduino and write C++ and all these things, ended up going around and helping the others. And, you know, for every hour-and-a-half session, we got, I don't know, 15, 20 of these going. You know, which was a really great experience, you know, including finding soldering defects, you know, checking stuff, writing code, just getting it installed and getting it to do anything. So again, fostering the spirit of community, which is quite an important part of it. And then for anyone who had enough confidence in their WABIT transmitter, they were then immediately used for ARDF. So a bunch of us were, well, everyone eventually was let loose in a park in Karlovac, which I can only imagine what this looked like to the locals. A load of people running around with these headphones on and sort of listening to these beeps. But what happened is these, it's not the finest of pictures, but these WABIT transmitters got put sort of in plastic Tupperware boxes and stuff and attached to a long wire, all set to 40 meters. 40 or 80? 80. And then going around the place, so the experience of, you know, how to do the nulls with your sort of two antennas, your vertical antenna and then your ferrite rod one, trying to find the null, and an excellent 2 hours running around in the grass looking for that.
Absolutely. So the previous two things, sort of the construction side and the ARDF, is something I had never done personally, and it's something that I want to bring to other young people in the country and actually organise sort of actually pretty much the same thing, building that WABIT where, you know, I wasn't confident with soldering or anything like that. I was able to, even mine worked, so I was really happy. And ARDF as well, it was a really fun activity. So the things we learnt there and did there, many of us have never done them before. We just haven't had a club or a place to do that. And, you know, we'll be bringing it here as well, so it was very worthwhile.
One thing I will say as a shameless plug, the RSGB do have a set of ARDF transmitters and receivers that can be lent out for club nights, and this is really good fun. You know, they don't even need to be radio people, but, you know, it's for some reason just running around finding these things is a really exciting evening, and I believe you can borrow it for free with enough notice to them, so I would really encourage you to do that as a club night if you're thinking of something, you know, something a bit different to do. So, you know, one of the things with going to these foreign countries is, of course, it's a shame to sit in the shack all day, as much as, we'd like to be hardcore radio operators and just sort of, work 30,000 people in the week. So we did spend a day in Zagreb. So they had found a team of tour guides. So we got split up and got shown around Zagreb, very beautiful city. This is one of the chapels there. But, a lot of sort of history and a lot of culture there, and a lot of really quirky things, such as the Museum of Broken Relationships was a strange thing to see on a sign. But we didn't actually visit it, but what it seemed to be was a museum of sort of letters of people getting dumped. But, but, experiencing that sort of other culture and, just seeing these different places was, again, very eye-opening. Here is Zagreb Cathedral, and one of the things they were saying is that that most of the people who live there have never actually seen both towers simultaneously, in that they're always fixing one or the other. And there were people who were sort of 50 years old, going they've lived there their whole life, never seen it without scaffolding on it. So, and every time they get close, there was an earthquake. So, but no. Was that? And again, just some sort of more of the photos. It's looking a little bit like a tourist brochure, but it really is a beautiful place, and I'd highly recommend going to see it if you ever get the chance. And keeping vaguely in theme, one of the big things we went to visit was the Nikola Tesla Technical Museum, which started with amazing demos for a sense of scale of this Tesla coil. That one on the left is probably 2 meters tall. Demonstrating some of his work in wireless power transmission, much to the horror of all the camp planners when he asked for volunteers, put them in a metal cage, and then promptly zapped it with that lightning bolt, which I can only imagine the health and safety assessment might not have covered. But, an excellent talk. And the other thing they don't tell you on YouTube videos is these things are really loud, like painfully so. So that's about 500 kilovolts they were reckoning, sort of jumping best part of a meter, as part of how much power you can transfer with these things. But no, excellent museum. But it wasn't just about his life and his work. There was also a lot looking into sort of the history of transport, seeing how it sort of evolved from your sort of horse and cart to your tram, which was big, then into sort of the motor car and seeing all that transition, and including a visit to, they had a mining training centre. So it was only, the top of it was only a couple of meters underground, but it had a effectively journey in time, in that the start of the tunnel was the sort of oldest style of how you would build a mine shaft and prop it up. And then working the way all the way down, it upgraded to more and more modern techniques. So, again, a really interesting museum, not just related to radio, but just an interesting look down sort of technical history.
Just one thing before we move on. We did another very interesting demonstration of the skin effect, where it was incredible. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it, but there was a sort of the demonstrator. He put like 500,000 volts through his skin, but at a very low current. And the other end, he was holding a fluorescent light, and it was just incredible. Really amazing to see. Really amazing to see. Right, the next part of YOTA, and YOTA are very, very big on this, and I think it's a very good concept. It's called Train the Trainer. Train the Trainer is just knowledge sharing, basically, where anyone can talk about anything and just share their ideas. So we had a lot of in-person sessions, pretty much one every day throughout the event, and people were sharing different ideas from different countries. A lot of Scandinavia do a lot of events with their youth, so that was very interesting to find out what they're doing. And the great thing with Train the Trainer, I've put a link on the next slide, is that they have all the activities that youth have in different countries. They publish it online, and so it makes it easy for people who are in clubs or the RSGB or anyone to go on this website and find out lots of ideas to involve youth, organise events and such like. Train the Trainer as well, as part of the YOTA scheme. There are quarterly reports from the youth committees, and they're all published on that website as well. So the website is at the bottom, hamyota.com/TTT. So this is just a picture of another one of the talks. They were very, very good talks, actually. So, yeah. Back in the UK, so a lot of, the goal of sending us to Croatia or wherever to these YOTA camps is so we can see what happens and bring that back to our country and sort of try and progress the hobby with the youth over here. So actually immediately after we came back, I think 2 weeks later, we had another event with CamHams and a lot of young people who were not just a part of the YOTA scheme, but sort of friends of people. We all came along and we did some contesting, 2 meters in HF. I think it was HF Field Day weekend that day. So that was really good. And it's sort of just keeping the momentum going is one of the challenges we have, but also one of the more fun things we've got to look forward to. Some other events, so I'm based in London, and one of the things I want to do is sort of organise a YOTA London group and sort of work on more regional and national events, but doing it at a regional level as well. Start off small before we sort of try and do something huge, basically. Involvement with YOTA, so YOTA is Jamboree on the air, which is to do with Scouts. That's actually next weekend, so I'd encourage you all to be on the air for that and show the Scouts some support. Again, this event has really energized me, so I've been in contact with my local club and we're hosting some Scouts there, the Radio Society of Harrow, and we've got some local Scouts coming in and we're going to do some of the activities that we did on YOTA with these Scouts, so that's quite cool.
Yes, so one of the things that came out of Train the Trainer as having been highly successful is looking at trying to, at least for trying to attack technical people, attracting them through the makerspace route. If you purely go with the, presenting the operating side of things, they concluded in various countries that this wasn't potentially the best way to get people in. So what we're trialling, at least at Cambridge University this year, is, as well as presenting ourselves as a radio society who are focused on comms and operating, we're also doing several evenings with more a makerspace style, where some of the members are bringing some of their sort of test equipment and tools down, along with some of their projects as a show and tell, and trying to appeal to people who have an interest in electronics but either haven't had the exposure or weren't aware of the wondrous things you can do with RF that you just can't do with some other hobbies, and that actually for some people using it to make that contact, that is kind of the end result, but actually for some of us the journey is the more interesting bit, and the working the person at the end is just proof you've done it. So we're going to trial this as a hybrid approach, so we're going for both ways, and hopefully I will have the first one of those is next Tuesday, so hopefully I'll have something to report back at some point as to how that goes. But we've had quite a lot of interest so far of people interested in that side of it.
And just more youth events. If anyone has any ideas, just share them. So thank you very much for listening, and any questions?
I'll do the running about with the mic. Right, the question is this way. I have to do a quick sprint down the chairs.
Dave Howell at M0VTG. It just occurred to me that I was a lab technician after I left the RAF for a year at a local secondary school, and it was very hard to get the head of science interested in amateur radio. I've tried very hard, we managed to put on a demo station, but it was only the students who happened to be doing science that day or for that period or whatever it was that were allowed to see it. The rest of the school never got to see it. I was wondering what interaction you might have with the STEM project in order to try and get teachers involved more, so that we get the youths interested perhaps through that system as well as yours.
Yeah, I mean, it is an excellent way to start, and actually that was how I got into it. Was a teacher at the school I was at was very much into it, and the headmaster at the time, although he was not enthused about it, he was, if you're enthusiastic about it, go for it. And, fortunate enough to be permitted to put a load of metal work. We had a A3S on the roof, so that was Mike X-Ray 0 Sierra Sierra Whiskey. how you get...
Well, so there are a lot of clubs. Some clubs, for example, my club, we have a schools liaison officer as part of on the committee. One of the roles is a schools liaison officer. So at a club level, that's something that can be done. If more clubs want to do that, and sort of, maybe if the schools liaison officer is someone who has children in a school or works with a school or has a job in a school, it might be worth having that role in clubs to sort of, have a closer link between schools and the radio club.
And if you want a shining example of that, some of the stuff that Derek Kozel has done at Cardiff, he's managed to get amateur radio projects into both masters and PhD projects, I believe. Sorry?
Undergrad.
Okay.
Exams into undergrad.
So obviously it is much easier for a university society with that sort of symbiotic relationship, but yeah, I think Hamzah's right, getting involved in schools almost younger than university level is quite an important thing too, because not everyone knows what they're doing by the time they're sort of 18 to 20, but it is possible to have missed people and it be a bit late by then.
Thank you, Martin G. 4GRS. Nearly 50 years ago now, that's when I was at school, and I'd started off as, at the cadet force, and subsequently I have helped out with their training corps. I had to pull out because of work, but some friends of mine sort of took over, shall we say, Paddington Wing in West London, in case you're interested. They've left now, and there seems to be no interest in ATC. Maybe I don't know about Army Cadet Forces in the radio side. They found the response was very negative. Is there something we could do to change that? I know that's not going to be so easy, but that is certainly a route into amateur radio for a lot of people.
I mean, these are hard questions. Sort of, can you get 50% of a club under the age of 40 overnight is not an easy thing to do. But I think it's... The big thing is making people aware that this is a thing and sort of get... But I think one of the big things that we decided out of YOTA that we needed to get out of this was... even if we couldn't get it into every school and every place, getting that visibility so that, quite a lot of people have signed up and got sort of M7s and stuff over COVID. And while this isn't directly related to your question, I think it becomes a self-perpetuating thing. If people get the visibility that there are other youngsters in it, then that is when, people in these societies might start being more interested. If you know someone that has done it and you're interested. So I think while the specifics of how do we get amateur radio back into an air cadet program, because they do have a communicators award of which an M6 was a module. Yeah, go for it.
Last weekend I actually was at a ATC squadron headquarters teaching air cadets. Okay, there were only 4 of them, plus an officer. But I have taught something in the order of 15 or 20 in the last year or two, air cadets. They have an air cadet publication, 146, which is their course for getting an M7 license. And it supplements an earlier course, which they do all the VHF bit. So by the time they get to this course, they now qualify through their own Ofcom approved exam system to get an M7 license. And so it is possible for air cadets to do it. I don't know what the Army cadets do. I don't think they have an equivalent course. I don't know.
But one thing I would say is if people have the contacts, we're more than happy to provide the training material, the training, the radios, the kit. There's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge that they're happy to share and put an awful lot of time in if people do have that sort of entry point but feel they need more support on the radio side.
Hi, AD, G6AD. No difficult questions, just a big well done, fantastic presentation. Great to see the energy and you guys are the future of the hobby. It's really really exciting to sit here as a middle-aged or slightly older middle-aged man and see the youth driving the hobby forward. And a big hi to Hamzah. Nice to meet a YouTube star. Really enjoy your content on the internet.
Are there any more questions that help if I use the microphone?
John, G7OHO. Do you think RSGB could do more to help encourage youth into amateur radio? If so, how?
As a committee member, or a board member, I'm very interested in hearing this because we would love some ideas.
Thanks. It's a good question, and my answer would be that it works both ways. If we come up with the ideas, and if we have the support of the RSGB, then it makes it very easy to do that. I don't expect all the ideas to sort of come from nowhere. I think that, you know, if someone who is sort of young has ideas, they might be more in touch with what people want. And so it's not just the RSGB or anyone's or club's responsibility to do something. Obviously it is, but it works both ways. So that's my answer. And doing things like this and organising, you know, conventions where there are other young people here and sending people on YOTA camps is just a great way of getting more people passionate about involving more young people in radio. It's sort of a cycle, and I think it's been a really good thing. YOTA's been a very, very good thing for amateur radio, and not just in the UK but internationally as well, because when we sit on the radio, who are we going to speak to? We need to speak to people in other countries, and so having this sort of international program is excellent. That's what I got to say.
I will say that the RSGB supported the team financially to get to Croatia, and to be fair, it was a very quick decision. The question was, can we fund it? The answer was yes, and just moved on. It wasn't a debate about whether it was value for money. It was a very straightforward decision. Any more questions from anyone? Oh, here we go.
I think this one is more possibly for you and for the RSGB than for these guys, but right. There was a structure with a youth champion and a youth team, which was sort of very tight, which worked fairly well for a number of years, but it seems to have become, shall we say, a little bit looser in the last 18 months or so. I think there's still a job advert out for a youth champion. I was wondering where we've got to on that to liaise with these guys.
I don't honestly know the answer to that. Sorry. I don't honestly know the answer to that off the top of my head. I know there is an exercise going on to effectively work out who is responsible for all the different activities, because that was somewhat opaque, and it's taken quite a lot of work to, you know, it's not only youth, but all the other things that the RSGB gets involved with. We're slightly getting off topic there. Any more questions from anybody? Oh, one more from the front here.
You showed a telescope. I'm involved in a couple of astronomy societies, and an awful lot of members of those societies are also radio hams. There's a great synergy between the two activities, and I feel it would be a good idea to make use of that and show people who are interested in astronomy the aspects of amateur radio that are most likely to appeal to them, and probably vice versa, actually, but it's just an idea I'm throwing into a hat.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. Just to follow up to that, I mean, our hobby is so broad that whether you do astronomy or whether you do army cadets or whether you do sailing, there's always an opportunity to involve radio in it somehow. So maybe astronomy, you know, you can do radio astronomy or satellites or the Grav radar, meteor detection, just listen to that. There's so much you can do with our hobby to link it to others. We have a very good opportunity for that.
Okay. Oh.
Again, not really a question, but just to say that these guys had tremendous fun in Croatia, and there will almost certainly be a similar event next year. We don't know where yet. Or I think maybe some people do, but it hasn't been quite finalised, and it will be announced over the next few months. So if you're under 26 and you're interested in going on the sort of trip that Hamzah and Dan have just described, then watch the RSGB media channels and news channels and as soon as the advert appears, then apply. So just watch the space, but hopefully it'll be known by early next year where and when.
Thank you very much, everybody. I've certainly found this very interesting. I had very little awareness of YOTA before this. I peripheral from what I'd seen in magazines and things, but nothing more detailed than that. So thank you very much to these guys for bringing that to life, and show our appreciation.